You're listening to Bears Beyond the Gate, a Bristol Bears podcast made by fans for fans. The three regulars at Ashton Gate who love the club, the game and all things Bears. Well, it's another Sunday game, boys, so we've had very little preparation time. So, unlike a couple of Sundays ago, we did actually manage to, Miles and me, we did actually manage to go home first and have a little bit of food before coming back down the beer factory. But we're all down here, Lee's back here as well, down the factory. And we're probably feeling a little bit more compos mentis than we were 2 Sundays ago, but we've all agreed that it's not a problem either way, is it?
It's not a problem either way. In fact, you two are probably more compos mentis than me because I've still got that cold. I do feel better now, but I was in bed for long periods again this weekend. So I'm glad to be back. Hopefully I sound a bit more cohesive this week.
You do. You sound a little bit... You did sound a little bit kind of Southville rather than Withywood though a couple of weeks ago.
Did I?
Yeah, you need to get back to your normal ways, mate.
Okay.
I'm starting to worry about Lee. I feel like potentially a Noel Weston might have more stamina than Lee. I mean, that's big talk, isn't it?
It is.
He's looking a little bit better this Sunday.
That's the sort of talk that only someone that doesn't come from a council estate would say, Miles.
Exactly.
Good lad.
But before we get on to stuff, we do have a bit of business to attend to with regards to our fantastic hosting location, the Bristol Beer Factory Tap Room. We are back here. We're very grateful for the fact it's not raining on the canopy. But boys, I think, Lee, you can pick this one up because we want to carry on with a little bit of a story that we started a couple of weeks ago with regards to our very good host, Lewis. And do you want to pick this one up
and
for
his
us?
Young lady friend, Jasmine.
Yeah.
Well,
Yasmin's my daughter.
That's right.
I tell you what, if he's hang on. Is Lewis dating my daughter? I'm not desperate.
As good a time as any to tell you, Pete.
I'm not desperate for beer that much.
No, Jasmine. Yeah. So I mean, obviously the listeners, we explained a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, when we were we have a little jolly.
You did.
It was a first date scenario, and we're actually pleased to announce that actually we're on date number 6 now, is it?
Despite
date number
the fact,
6.
let's just be clear. Despite the fact that you announced on our pod that he was punching above his weight.
Well, I mean, I'm still thinking he's punching above his weight, well above his weight. Are we disagreeing that yet?
6 dates in.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the stats, Lee. He's 6 dates in.
That's 6 wins from 6.
But we have to add in the free food, the free drink in the beer factory, and. Is that? I mean, I know Lewis is. He's charismatic.
Yeah.
He's a good-looking young man.
Yeah.
But maybe the food and drinks just swaying the number of dates.
Are you basically saying he's buying her affection?
I wouldn't like to say that, Pete.
I also just thought
wouldn't like to say that
because before we recorded tonight, Lewis did introduce us all to Jasmine.
Yeah.
And we spent a good 15-20 minutes chatting to her, and I think that might have been a cardinal error by Lewis. I think he might have played that one wrong. I mean, I'm not sure. He's gambled there by introducing Jasmine to us.
Three good looking.
Well, no, I think three boring middle-aged men. So she's now turning around thinking this young lad who's kind of runs a bar, cool bloke, and hasn't actually met any of his friends yet. And then the first 3 people she meets, they're like 50 years old.
Well, we should say Lewis has actually bought our affection. Yes. And we're not easily bought. So I think if that is what he's doing, then Jasmine's in good company.
It's true. He's a bit like the sons that none of us have got. Well, you've got a son, Miles. But me and Lee, we've got 2 daughters.
He is, yeah.
If I had a son, I'd want him to be like Lewis.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to taking him away to Gloucester.
Big news. We have bought him a ticket to Gloucester away. We're all going to be at the Shed that weekend. It happens to be my birthday as well, the 29th of March. So. And we bought him a ticket, so we're going to take Lewis there as a thank you for looking after us.
And actually, we should say Lewis tonight did mention the fact his dad was going to be there as well.
Oh yes,
and he's a Glaswegian, which I was surprised about.
He was I believe he was a medic down at Gloucester Rugby in the
80s and 90s.
Niles, he wasn't just a medic; he was the Gloucester doctor.
The doctor. Fair play.
In the 80s and 90s.
Dr. Foster.
And more importantly, he likes a wee dram.
Yeah.
And a Malbec, which, I mean, that guy is going to be right up my street.
I was just thinking, actually, what it must be like to be the Gloucester Rugby
Gloucester
club
doctor.
doctor in the 80s and 90s. He must have been rearranging quite a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, when Mike Teague was saying, you made me bleed my own blood and shit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a proper time to be a medic.
Yeah. No, I think we may have to catch up with Mr. Hayward Senior.
I think we might.
And get
a few stories for the pods.
Reminiscing from the old days. Anyway.
We'll get a nice Argentinian, Melbeck.
Yeah, we could do that.
Ready for him?
Yeah. We could take one of those little portable barbecues. We could do a little steak at the same time.
Steak.
Yeah. Just on the side of the pitch. Yeah. Actually, right, let's move on. So we have got a game to talk about, boys. It was Newcastle Falcons. This slightly bizarre Premiership fixture that's come after 2 weeks of Europe and then comes before sort of 6 to 7 weeks of Six Nations with no Premiership. Obviously, we've got the Queensland Reds next Friday, and I'm sure other clubs have got various things. There's also the Premiership Cup, two or three more group games. Then there'll be the semis and the final. So there is a bit of rugby to come, but this is a very bizarre, round of the Premiership.
It's a nonsensical round for me.
Isn't it?
It really is. It just seems like I know it's not pointless, but it just seems so.
Well, it certainly wasn't pointless for us today, was it?
You're right.
Not today.
Yeah, it felt like it was sort of a Jeopardy-less game this afternoon, but as we'll come to talk about, it was far from it.
Well, I mean, we were sitting pretty in second place, having had a couple of more difficult games since the Leicester game that we crowned the greatest game ever, and our red zone efficiency were unbelievable.
Chiefs did us a favour yesterday, beating Surrey.
Chiefs did a great favour, but the reality was, we whatever happened today, we were still going to be sitting pretty in second place come the end of the Six Nations. The only difference is that teams have sort of come up behind us a little bit, but that's great, really, for Premiership rugby because it shows what a competitive league it is, and even Northampton, even though they lost. When I looked at the table, they're not that far behind. So they only takes a couple of wins. And I think Sale had dropped down to 7th.
Yeah. After today?
Before the game today. So they're still going to be in 7th. So, yeah, it's good. I think we're in a really, really good position. I think I actually tweeted out just after the game with the table, I think we're on 40 points. I don't think any of us would have thought we'd be on 40 points at this stage of the season, sitting second. Particularly, when we were being sold the idea of a small squad and all this sort of stuff. So I think we've got to, before we talk about anything, I think we've got to take this moment to say that I think we're in an excellent position. And we've got to be really, really sort of excited about what's to come after the Six Nations.
We're certainly positive, aren't we?
And let's not forget that we were a little bit doom and gloom of late, weren't we, about our sort of injury crisis in our small squad. We went into that Claremont game with some big names out, and to come and get another 5 points today and go into this break with 6 weeks recovery time. You're right. I mean, we're cock-a-hoot that we're sitting second.
To be fair, I think the doom and gloom started when we were bageled in our Christmas fixture by Sale, and then had a better game at Saracens, but obviously didn't pick up much there. Picked up 1 point. But yeah, you're right, Miles. We did acquit ourselves pretty well in Europe. With a good win, well, I say good win against Benetton. It was perhaps a slightly fortunate win against Benetton, but it was a win, and obviously played well in Claremont. Even though I think we never really did we decide whether we should have kicked it? Obviously, in hindsight, we should have.
No, we all agreed we should have kicked it.
I think we did. I think at the heat of the moment, we thought we should.
Newcastle Falcons. I mean, the reality was last year we nearly put 100 points on them, and we beat them first game of the season, workmanlike victory, I think. But we all agreed that was a good victory, first game of the season, because it's not an easy place to go.
No.
Not an easy place to go, particularly on a Friday night. A bit like Stoke on a Tuesday. Anyway, and it's a difficult one because the weather was pretty poor. I mean, the weather was horrendous this morning. And actually, I looked at that and thought, it's typical, isn't it? It could affect
It's a leveller, wasn't it?
It was a leveller.
It was.
But the trouble is, it did stop raining just before the game, which was quite good. And there was even a little bit of sunlight.
You couldn't see for 5 minutes.
You know, that stupid thing where I couldn't see anything because it was coming over the top of the Lansdowne into the Dolman. So actually, I sort of approached, when I actually got to the ground, I was less worried about the weather than I was when I left home. But yeah, and we did. I mean, we cruised to a 21-0 lead very, very quickly.
And we should say, last week we did say right from the beginning, we've got to earn the right to play. Well, we did that. We did 21-0. We've earned the right then to start dominating and to push on. And I know Steve Diamond, the interview that he did with the press on the TV before the game, he was saying he wanted Bristol Bears to kick the ball. They wanted us to, they wanted us to give them the ball back so they could run at us, and obviously then use their physicality and actually I thought 21-0. I thought now we literally could be looking at the same sort of score that we put on them last season. I think it was 85-15, was it?
It was
Something like that.
14.
But then I think we took our foot off the gas.
I think there was very much gas release. I thought. I mean, what do you think, Mars? Let's just. I mean, I think it was almost a game of 4 quarters. It was the first quarter was our 21-0. The second quarter of the first half was poor.
What do you? Yeah.
And then the first quarter of the second half
I can't
wasn't
believe
great.
you're using an American football analogy.
Is it?
I know.
Pete.
But
Quarters. I know.
And then, well, yeah, but we do talk about the quarters in rugby, don't we? There's 4 20-minute quarters. Is that not right? Is that not a thing?
Well, not really.
People talk about this
Halves.
quarter, that quarter.
I don't see it.
our
like that,
final
but
quarter was
Well,
a
you're
bit
right.
better.
You're right. I mean, we were talking about it at the game that I think did we from sort of 21 minutes and then 25 minutes? I don't know. With a bit of complacency set in, I don't know whether we took a bit of felt a bit less respectful for Newcastle because Revovo, sorry, that's appalling.
That's
Apologies.
got to be a ding.
Revovo
He's done a Nick Mullins, hasn't he?
had some slightly dubious decision making. He passed to a mate and threw out the dead ball line, missing a Bristol player entirely, didn't he? And then Newcastle had some penalties after penalties and 2 more penalties, didn't they? At like sort of 30 minutes just before half time. Yeah, some questionable play by Bristol, and I don't know what happened really. That we just
It was sloppy, wasn't
switched
it?
off and sloppy.
Penalty count got worse.
Yeah.
I think it was almost as if, and I don't think they did think this, but it was almost as if they'd already in their mind had already won the game.
Yeah.
And I think, and up to that point, Big Rav had been making hay on the wing. I mean, he was just running through brick walls.
Yeah.
And he just, these things happen. And I just think maybe it just took the whole kind of focus down a little bit from the rest of the team. And as you say, it only takes a couple of penalties. Suddenly they get a rolling ball try. Suddenly, we make another mistake and knock on, and before we know it, it's 21-14 at half time. I think, is that right?
Yeah,
it was
it
21-14
Yeah.
half time.
We butchered a sort of line out, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think just before half time to go in. Only 7 points adrift. Really.
We should just say at this juncture
Again.
that it's just started raining and there's nothing I can do about it. So
We
I'm
have
sorry.
not got the technical ability on our
No.
high spec recording device to do
Or
anything about
my
it.
editing software, so we'll just have to hope that it doesn't rain too hard.
We have
So-
a lot of rain here, boys, don't we?
So I think we've agreed.
Yeah.
First half, I would say, first half of the first half then was brilliant.
First
it was
quarter.
It was almost like we went off too quickly, to be honest. Second half of the first half, which I would call the second quarter, wasn't good at all. It was actually back to sort of some pretty sloppy stuff that we've seen before.
Yeah.
But 21-14. Here's a question, Lee. You're Pat Lam. How do you approach that half-time team talk?
Well, I know what Pat Lam would have said. We keep going, boys.
Yeah.
We
Don't
keep
do anything
driving on. Just
But do you think
believe
he
in the
would have-
system.
Do you think he would have addressed the slight sloppiness?
No,
Do you not
no,
think
I don't think
Do
he
you not
would have.
think there was a teacup scenario?
No, I would have think just tighten up on things. I think he would have said tighten up on things and keep going the way we're going, and we'll get the win. I don't think he would have gone too mad.
No. Okay.
I mean, there's been other games where he could have gone mad, and we've heard from the dressing room that it hasn't been the case so much. So,
I suppose you're right. I remember that game, the classic one at Harlequins, wasn't it? When he said you may as well get back on the bus.
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
And that was because they hadn't performed in the first half. I suppose we did perform in the first half, didn't we? So, and 21-0 up, you can't really complain too much. But maybe just trying to keep the focus. I thought it was a bit like, I joked a little bit that I felt we actually showed them a little bit of disrespect. I think we were a bit like a private school that were playing a comp. and we started to showboat a little bit.
I love how you bring that back to a class system again.
But that's what I felt. It's just that sort of slight. I don't like the slight sort of not arrogance, but just slight sort of almost thinking ahead. And actually, those boys, Newcastle, thought, no, we're going to get stuck in, and they got stuck in. They tried to do the basics well, and they got rewarded for it.
To be fair, are we actually giving Newcastle enough credit as well? Because they lost Radwan in the week to Leicester.
Yeah.
He scored on his debut, didn't he, for them yesterday? Yeah. Obviously, we've taken the lock, who was injured anyway, and I just think, actually Stevenson on the wing, I thought he played a blinder for them, and I just feel like there's a lot of good young players in that Newcastle team, and I think, all right. I think if we hadn't have taken our foot off the pedal a little bit, then things might have been different. But full credit to Falcons, because they kept going, and that's difficult when you're getting beat week in, week out. It's a difficult thing to do to keep yourself motivated.
Yeah, no, I
played some good games. At home they beat Sarries, didn't they? So you cannot disrespect these guys. They travelled down to try and disrupt us. Yeah. And for a lot of the game, the Steve Diamond's lads, they did that. Yeah.
Okay, so Miles, we come out second half. We're 21-14 ahead. I don't know what you're feeling like at half time. Are you thinking? Not that worried, really? Do you think we're going to get this together?
Yeah, I think so. My thoughts were that really, we were there live watching. I feel like Pat needed to put a bit of a rocket up the boys' arse, in my opinion, rather than a little bit of a bit more of a tightening up conversation.
Was it a rocket or is it a tightening? Is it a tightening rocket? It sounds a bit painful.
A tightening rocket. The discipline wasn't great, but like Lee said, we were starting to disrespect them a little bit. They were playing well, some good quality players, and they were seeing some chinks in our armour.
So we're a little bit, I'm just looking at my notes, we're a bit sloppy when we come out in the second half. Joe Jenkins makes that a really good break, and he's kind of running towards the line, and from where we're sitting, it looks like he's going to get there, and then suddenly the ball flies forward.
No, he didn't protect the ball.
And then I thought, because we'd already had Jan Thomas had butchered one a little bit in the first half, and I think, is it one of those days where we're going to rue this kind of profligacy, which we have seen in the past. But actually, I think we then did score after that quite quickly. I think it was Rich Lane, fantastic break.
Yeah, we had silky run through the middle,
and then he passed it. Like where we were sat, it looked like it went about 45 degrees forward, but on the replay, it was like one of those ones that the laws of physics states that it came out of the hand straight, but it was such a fast pass at pace that it had that forward momentum. So I'm thinking then, this is it now. This is it. We'll just pull away. And then we had the charge down try. So Harry Byrne goes to actually kick. We're doing what we want to do. Clear.
I still thought that was a bit sloppy for a player of Byrne's class. Yeah. I thought that was a little bit sloppy. And just when we've got the ascendancy again, it was typical Bears for us to let them back in it. It was quite frustrating.
And I also think we should give credit to the Newcastle centre, because he was a big lad, that centre.
He is a big old boy.
And it wasn't a charge down; it was like a slap down. Yeah.
Well, the power in which Byrne kicks that ball, there's no wonder it got such a ricochet into our dead ball.
Yeah, they had to go to TMO to double check it.
And to be fair, to be able to chase that down and just get it in. And
his hands must have been stinging.
I know,
because it wasn't
it was really well taken.
We did feel like, if that's close enough, give it to him, because that boy had gas and he deserved that, didn't he?
So suddenly we're kind of 28-21 miles. Having thought, we're going to score. We then get a penalty. We take the 3, but they then.
Well, then we did show them a bit of respect, then, didn't we? Because
by taking the penalty. So Miles, but then ultimately we're 31-28. We've been 21-0 up. We've gone 21-14. We've come out and scored in the second half. We're thinking we're weathering the storm. And then before we know it, we're 31-28. We're 3 points ahead. And, what are you... And this was on 62 minutes. So, what were you thinking there, do you think? What was your thoughts at the time?
I think at no point, we were ahead the whole game. So I don't think at any point I thought we would let it slip. I thought, that Newcastle are going to come back. They've got that ability, but we'll just, show our class and get another score. So I wasn't too worried. It was within 3 points, and there was another 10 minutes, wasn't there, before there was another try. But I didn't think we were ever going to lose it, to be honest.
I'm
31-28.
I'm really surprised at that.
Really?
Yeah.
Because knowing us as Bears, I thought at that point we've got the ability, the innate ability to throw this away.
Yeah.
Because we have.
We've done it before.
We've done it.
It's hard not to. I mean, it's not very loyal to think that. Is it?
I know what you're saying.
Against much stronger sides.
Yeah.
A given, yeah. I think if we'd have faced someone in the top 6 today and we'd been down there, I would have been
see what
bricking
you're saying.
it. Yeah, but I think the ability of Newcastle and the good side, but to come back and take the win would have been a bit of a tall order.
And to be fair to Newcastle, they helped us out by then getting yellow carded.
Yeah.
So
that was the turning
That
point.
was the turning
ultimately,
point.
of the
Yeah.
game,
So
wasn't it?
according to my notes, and I could be wrong because we were only, as I said, we haven't watched this back. I think they got a yellow.
About 64,
It was
67
a
minutes,
head on
something
head,
like
wasn't it? It
that.
was a high. It was a high.
Yeah, it
went
was
to
on
Tierno.
Yancey, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was on Yancey. It was a pretty nasty turn. So it was never a red because there was both of them had bent knees.
Yancey had already offloaded
Almost,
the ball. But
I mean,
it was.
I mean, I did wonder that because the ball had already gone out of his hands before the contact. But then you could argue that doesn't really matter. It was still a dangerous. It was a dangerous manoeuvre. And maybe Yancey dropped it because he suddenly saw some bloke coming at him head on head. But anyway, so actually you're right. You're basically saying, Miles, that regardless of that yellow, we would have still been fine. We'll never know. But that yellow did make a big difference.
Yeah.
And then I think we had a Fiji on Fiji try. Ravovo gets it. It was the other side from the Dolman, so I was thinking, oh, go on, there's a 2-on-1, pass it, and I couldn't see who it was, and then I realised it was Bill Matter.
Big Bill.
And I'm not sure. I mean, I know Joe Owen's been out on the wing and Steve Luatua sometimes, but I've not seen Big Bill Matter. And I was a bit worried, wondering whether that was like one of those ones where he was actually out of system, but this suddenly got into system by chance and just suddenly got laid on a plate.
I'm glad that he didn't have too much farther to run, actually.
I mean, and then I think 73 minutes, we're then 38-28. And then I think Marmion scores another one, so he breaks through.
Yeah, Byrne was limping off at this point. I mean, hopefully
it was a bit of cramp, apparently.
Okay.
And then at 43-28, I've written down, it's turning into a rout. And I thought, is this Fortress Ashton Gate? And then I looked at the score and thought, well, actually, that's 28 points they've scored. That's not really a fortress, is it? And then Diego Bailey comes on and scores.
It was good to see the young lads get a try as well, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it started to feel about like champagne rugby at that point, didn't it? At like 75 minutes.
We were. I mean, by then it was all over, and then they score a good try actually on 78.
An amazing crossfield kick.
And it was almost reminiscent of that one that Tyrone Green scored last year when he dived into. It wasn't in the goal area, but he took it. And it just shows, like, if you put the ball in front of somebody running really fast, there's basically not a lot you can do to stop them.
No.
So fair play to that lad. I think it was
Stevenson again.
It was another stalwart.
He scored a couple, I think.
Yeah, he's a Falcons stalwart.
Yeah.
And then, basically, we finish off. Elizalde's come on. A little bit of hip sway. A little bit. It's like watching him do the Argentinian tango, I thought. He's in there 22.
Yeah.
And then pops it to Noah Heward, who scores his second one of the games.
Actually, talking about Noah Heward, we should say there was a point in that second half, and I can't remember. It was when he scored the first try, or he set up the try. There was a crossfield kick. Heward took it with his right hand, literally plucked it out of the air, brought it down onto his left, and I can't remember if he scored himself or he offloaded it inside and we scored from it. But that was absolutely brilliant, and full credit to the young.
You like
young
that,
lad there.
don't you?
Yeah, that was really nice.
You like that?
He's like Miles said last week. Actually, Heward's back in his stride. He's fully fit.
I think the Saracens game, it was his warm up. The first half of the Saracens game was his warm up. Second half, he was in it. The game against Claremont, he was fully. And then today we saw, and we need him. He is a fully fit Noah Heward. Is a first wing. He's a first team contender. He
you'd pick Heward over receiver all day long.
So I think, our
I
first, if Gabs was fit, we'd have Gabs on the left, I reckon, and Heward on the right. And I think that's a nice balance of two different types of winger. So that's something to look forward to, hopefully, post Six Nations. So, Miles, we finish off 55-35. Somebody who's just switched on, BBC Sport. Well, they'll probably still be waiting for the result to go up because they're not the quickest. But somebody who's been following it, they suddenly see the result. They think, Bears have back to the Bears way, smashed the Falcons. But it wasn't really like that, was it?
No, it didn't feel like that. I mean, like we said, a slight summary is we had these sort of like ascendancies. We were climbing a mountain to sort of plant the Bristol flag on top, and then the lads from the northeast came with their cheeky Newcastle flag and put us down a peg or two, and then we had an ascendancy again, and then Newcastle came back. So it was not, as the score suggested, a 55-35 rout. It was a thoroughly well played, and might we add, that's Newcastle's only 4-point bonus point of the entire season. So some Bristol fans might say, well, that's still a bit worrying, but at the end of the day, we wanted 5 points. We got the 5 points, and that was enough.
Yeah, I thought it was disappointing. Disappointing in the fact that it was one, like we've said before, it's the one last game now before Six Nations.
Yeah.
We had a really strong side out that I thought was more than capable of doing it. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, I don't know. But for me, it was a game that we can't afford to have these ups and downs during games. We need to go for it. We need to go for the juggler, and ultimately we got the points. We got the 5 points, which is what we were there for. But it was just a bit disappointing that we didn't keep going the way other teams might have against Newcastle, winning 21-0 up. Could have been a lot more, but maybe I'm just being a bit too harsh.
Let's not forget that Newcastle did beat Saracens at home, so they have beaten. I, in some ways, I was quite pleased for them. I know their fans think, we had 55 points put on us, but I thought they would put up a decent show, and particularly when they were 21-0 down, I did wonder how it might go, and I think it's good. We also need to be tested, and there's, I know it is totally cliche ridden, but there is stuff that we will look at in that game that you rightly say is we need to iron out before we then come back afterwards. And I think we are serious contenders. Let's be clear about this. If we are serious contenders for the title, not just the playoffs, we have to believe that because we're still there. We're second on 40 points, and we potentially will have all of our injured players back.
We should have pretty much everyone back.
I mean, we beat Bath away at the Rec. We're the only team that have beaten Bath this season with our full side. Yeah. So we are serious contenders, but they'll look at that today and say, okay, when we've got to think about a few things here and there, and we'll sort it out. And if we keep things ticking over with the Prem Cup, and we've got the Queensland Reds next week, I'm feeling we're going to start the restart, as it were, in a much better place than we did last year, and we only just missed out. So,
that's true.
So although it was a bit loose and it was a bit sloppy, and you're absolutely right, there were things that we need to sort out. I think we're in a fantastic position.
Oh, absolutely.
We would have all taken that today.
Yeah, we did.
So, before we just finish on it, any players in particular you want to? I mean, we've mentioned Heward, obviously. We've mentioned a few, but
Ravovo for me.
Ravovo?
Yeah, that's what I'm just going with Miles.
Miles just makes his own rules up, doesn't he?
No, I thought it was class, and it was great to see him on the wing for me.
Yeah.
Because I know, obviously, we've said that Gabs would have been there.
Yeah, agreed.
But what, a couple of weeks ago, did we say on the pod, what a perfect replacement we've got for Gabs already in our squad, and there he is.
He hasn't looked at his metre stats, but I'm sure he made quite a lot of metres today.
He had some gas today, didn't he? And I think you're right. Put in the right position on the wing.
It's not a boxing match.
With players to beat, then he's brilliant. He's brilliant. He's powerful. A powerful runner. There's not many people are going to stop him at pace.
And like you say, he fits Pat's mould. He's versatile. He can come in and play at centre.
Yeah.
He can play on the wing. You know, he's got that kind of that strength and that speed that you need.
He's such a different player to what he was the few times we saw him last year as well.
He's bulked up
He's
as well,
bulked
isn't he?
up. He's learnt English.
Yeah.
And he's probably settled in Bristol. Because we forget these things. We just assume they're all professionals. They'll be able to play from day one. But you know, for him, it's probably a massive culture change to come here.
Yeah.
Huge.
I mean, God knows, I don't know where he's living, but yeah, fair play.
With Mata.
He's probably is. Maybe he's shacking up with Jake Woolmore, because didn't Jake Woolmore take in most of the players into his
Yeah, he
house?
does. Yeah.
But Emerson's Green or somewhere
It was actually like we were saying about Andy Wren a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? I mean, he's gone to Treviso, and he's had to do the same thing over there and settle in, and you know, for me, he was class.
A couple of things I'd like to mention Kieran Marmion for two reasons.
Yeah.
One is I don't think we missed Harry Randall at all, and I think Marmion has been ramping up.
It's been knocking on the door.
And I think I think he's a brilliant replacement for Harry. I mean, don't get me wrong, we love Harry, and I'd have Harry start every time, but there's not a huge difference. And of course, the other reason was because one of our loyal listeners, Yana, who is Yana JPEG, who is a massive Connacht fan, who has started following Bristol this season, partly on the basis of Joe Joyce going over there and kind of then realising there was a Bristol Bears podcast. Well, he came over to the game.
Yeah,
and
he did.
We met him after the game with his and also with his mum and dad.
I know. I actually offered to pick him up, didn't I, this morning? I didn't realise he was with his mum and dad.
It was
I was on the
brilliant.
same.
He said they're going to fit in your van.
Mum and dad on a roof rack.
He was very polite. He said, "No, it's all right. I'm sorted." They didn't realise, but we bought him a pint of the black stuff. Me and Miles.
Good man.
He said it was all right. He said, you know, from Guinness that travelled.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think.
Yeah, but he's from
polite.
Galway, so it's not
that's
Dublin,
true.
is it?
And it is in a plastic glass in the sports bar. But and we just, it was really nice. It's quite nice to, you know, we had a bit. We chatted on Twitter. So yeah, it was really good. We really appreciate that, and we look forward to hopefully at some point in the future
going over to Galway.
Yeah, and it'd be great if we did.
Oh, boys, let's go over for the Oyster Festival.
Ooh.
How good would that be? I know you fellas probably don't like oysters. But
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
See, that would be a perfect time to sleep at mum and dad's.
It's not in the middle of the winter, is it?
No. I think
goodness.
is it March?
I don't know. On the other person I wanted to mention was Rich Lane.
Yes.
Yeah, actually.
Thought he had a great game today.
Yeah, he did.
Footwork. It's like seeing him on Strictly.
It's an exciting player to watch.
He is, and I think this is a good game for Rich to get his mojo back, get his consistency back again, because he's a very important player to Bristol Bears.
Well, again, it's funny you mentioned Rich Lane because again, versatility, even.
Vitality, anything.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk. I don't know if you boys have heard
Maybe too much talk.
about our fullback moving on, Max Naylands
to France. Yeah,
there's been a lot of talk about that. But I thought, well, Rich Lane, again, perfect fit. But there's also been a little bit of talk about someone from Gloucester.
Another Argentinian
that might be
moving
away.
on.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so for those that don't know what we're talking about, there's been some talk about Santi Carreras leaving Gloucester. His contract's up at the end of the season. George Skivington has probably kind of hinted that maybe Gloucester haven't got the wherewithal to keep him.
Right.
So he's going to ask for big money. He's a big-time player. Bath has been mentioned, obviously, as they always are. It's still quite hard to understand how that can work.
I know.
But
Bristol, we know that we've been below the salary cap this year. We know that we're probably building to have a bigger season next year, and I think we need to be able to play on two fronts, and we need a European front as well.
Agreed, yeah.
Although, it is disappointing that we've gone out of Europe twice in 2 years. Although this year I think was more mitigating circumstances. We've already got 4 Argentinians at the club. They know where all the best steakhouses are in this area.
Lewis is all man. Lewis, proud.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I'd love it if Santi. I mean, he's a great player.
He's brilliant. He's absolutely
and actually,
brilliant.
he would be a good mentor to someone like Elizalde as well.
Yeah.
Like bring him on,
yeah.
so that we've got a bit of a succession plan.
Yeah, Benjamin Crondona.
Benjamin, I mean, and it would make them feel more at home than they are.
He's then sort of Premier #1 kicker, isn't he?
Yeah,
So that
we
would
might
be a
miss
good
him in the autumn.
backup.
We'll miss him in the autumn internationals possibly, but it's not. We're not going to miss him Six Nations. So, although obviously, if you have anyone but English players, you're okay. Because that's just on a tangent. This is not Genji's fault, right? But on socials, there was a picture of him yesterday. Like they're all on a golf course in Girona, having a great time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like,
we got a Premiership fixture.
Like, it's not Genji's fault, but like, the optics of that is not good for all of every other English player who's back in. Storm Yayan has come in. They're all playing, and you see the boys kind of, they've been taken out of their clubs for a camp, and all they're doing is playing golf. Why couldn't they go Saturday?
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Or yet tomorrow.
Yeah, totally agree. But the interesting thing for me is that you hadn't mentioned Max Malin's go with a tear in your eye at all. And is that because we just haven't had the best of Max Malin's? We've had a lot of injuries. It's almost a little bit. It kind of feels like what's his name? Sinclair. Carl Sinclair.
Yeah.
Almost feels like we spent a lot of money out.
And not a lot of
And
return.
also, we ought to say at this juncture that
it's all,
we have no
speculation.
actual. And Max
no
Malins, who I'm
evidence.
sure doesn't listen to this, but if he did listen to this, he'd be sat there going, "Boys, you have no idea. I'm committed. I'm trying to get myself fit for you.
Yeah.
It's not my fault that I did a hamstring, and I'll do whatever." And I'm sure that's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason he's out of mind is because we just haven't seen him for ages, isn't it? And it's just really disappointing. And I'm sure it's a million times more disappointing for him to have got injured, because he came here because he wanted to. He came here because he wanted to prove himself again, didn't he?
At fullback spot,
And actually, but then on the other narrative is, as we all know this, rugby players aren't paid loads of money, and if they get big money offers, they have to think about it. And if he feels that England have kind of rejected him a little bit, which I imagine he does, at the end of the day, let's be honest, just because we love Bristol Bears doesn't necessarily mean that
Everyone
every
else
professional player is going to. They're going to do what's right for them.
Yeah, I agree.
And to answer your question, no, I think the point is, if they turn around and said Max has decided to go to France, he would go with my blessing, as long as we had someone to cover for him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
okay, I'm going to ask you a question then. It's a yes or no. No, actually, it's a one or the other, right?
Yeah.
Max Malins or Santi Carreras? Miles?
Okay, I'm
Max or Santi?
basing on the last couple of years' injuries. Currently, Carreras.
Pete?
I've got to say, and this is it's difficult to say, but I'd say Santi because of his kicking option as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Good addition.
And he has played fly half as well.
Yeah.
So he's a fullback. So I don't mean this in. It's difficult. It's difficult. You're worrying me now because you're making a good point.
All I'm doing is putting stuff out.
You're making a good point. You feel like we've just thrown
I feel
him on the
dirty
pile.
about throwing him on the fire.
I mean, I do feel a bit dirty now because he's done nothing wrong, Max.
No,
has he?
no.
And actually, before
No,
he
not
got
at
injured,
all.
he'd scored about 5
amazing.
tries.
But it is for us to put it out there.
But it
and
was-
I'd be
yeah,
interested to see what the listeners
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, it was that, Sheedy and Randall did take the piss out of him saying he had a sloppy rig. So I'm only going on that as well. No, I think you're right. It'd be a good little one. We don't normally do this, do we? Let's have a question for the listeners. Max Malins, would we prefer him, or if we had the option, Santi Carreras, if it was a one or the other for next season? What do we think? It's out there.
Let's put it out. Yeah.
Well, I think that on that point, we need to move on.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So there was a women's game
Yesterday.
on Saturday, yesterday, away at Trailfinders, a place that we've been to. We went to a long time ago.
Probably never return.
When Bears were in the champ. Well, they weren't the Bears then; they were Bristol in the
Bristol
championship.
Rugby were in the
Me and Miles went
championship.
wrestling.
And Miles and Lee. This is for listeners.
we went rogue on Ealing Common.
I still remember. Well, we got the train and we went and watched. It was Six Nations, wasn't it? And we watched England, someone in that pub in Ealing. So I had a
That's
few
right,
pints
yeah.
before,
Yeah.
went to Trailfinders. That was the one where you nicked Tony's
Hatgate.
hat. Tony.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, actually, we need to tell that
Oh,
story
we gotta
again.
tell this story.
So I'll start it off and Lee will take it over. So basically, we get to Trailfinders, and there's only one tiny little stand in those days.
Yeah.
And you have to go up through the bar. We get there, and there's not that many seats. So we're sat, and we have to go right to the end of the row. So we have to go past all these people. There's
Get
4
everyone
seats,
up, yeah.
And it's me, Lee, Miles, and Tony. And Tony's wearing his little Bristol Bears bobble hat. Anyway, do you want to carry it on? Because you were sat next to me.
Go
what
on,
happened-
Miles, you
because
carry
actually,
on.
we need Lee to finish this off. So anyway, kind of second half, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, so we were sort of drinking and concentrating on the game a little bit. It was pretty awful weather. We all needed our beanies on.
But there was this little... Like,
And
at the
Lee
end
had
of our
gone off
row-
what we thought
Yeah,
to go
Lee
to
had
the
disappeared.
toilet or to get a beer.
And we'd noticed at the end of our row, it was the end of the stand, but there was a kind of little... Like there was a doorway that came out, and there was another little viewing area, so there was
Yeah.
some access
Yeah.
to the end. But we'd all assumed during the game that access was restricted.
Yeah.
But as you
And
say,
someone
Lee disappears
suddenly
somewhere,
nicked Tony's hat from upon his head,
and the
and
only
it was suddenly like fuming.
well, the only reason we knew it'd been nicked because we heard this bloke go, "You bastard!" like that, and like all of these, like absolutely lose it.
We had
I'm
no
like,
idea.
what the hell's going on?
We had no idea who stole it.
These-
Assuming it was like some
No,
sort
no,
of
but
like
this is the story.
Ealing
No.
Trailfinders.
No, it isn't
scrote,
because
wasn't it?
there was this woman sat next to us. You won't know this. There's this lady sat next to us, and she turns to me and goes, "Someone's nicked his hat."
Oh,
Anyway, we're like, and then do you know what? She goes, "It was your mate." So we're like, "What?" Anyway,
It was the council estate kid.
So Lee, you finish the story off. You tell us what you did.
It was the funniest thing ever because I'd pinched Tony's hat basically, and I saw the opening in the restricted access.
You saw it, yeah.
I saw there was a slight gap in the door, so I've gone wallop to Tony's hat. I've gone in through the restricted access, not knowing what was in there. But the funniest thing was, I saw Tony's face when I pinched his hat. He didn't know it had come from me because I literally grabbed him from the other side, went in, and I was literally laughing so much I fell down a flight of stairs, and I'm at the bottom of a concourse, laughing my head off. And seconds later, Tony has literally gone down a flight, and he's there trying to get his hat back.
I've never seen Tony move so fast in my life.
Honest to God, it was the funniest thing ever, wasn't
that
it?
was only the start of it because obviously then we watched the game. I think we lost, didn't we?
No,
we
win?
won
It was
narrowly.
close.
Narrowly
But
won.
then we, of course, as is the way with these great away days, you have a great journey up. You have a great pre-match sort of time in the pub. You have a great time during the game, and then when the game's over, it's about 10 o'clock at night, and you're
You
thinking,
get home.
"Oh, how are we going to get home?"
Yeah.
And anyway, so we're walking out, and we basically had arranged to get the train. We didn't even know where we are. So we're looking for an Uber. Did we even have Ubers in those days?
No, we were looking for
ordered
a-
a
I
taxi.
think it was a taxi.
No,
We
ordered
ordered
a
it.
taxi.
Yeah.
And we were trying to explain where we were,
Yeah.
and we didn't really know. And I'm looking on Google Maps. So I'm trying to deal with this taxi driver. He then rings me and says he's somewhere else. And I'm trying to work out. I turn round and I see Lee and Miles like scrapping.
We decided to have a wrestle,
on the
didn't we?
side, wrestling on the floor. And there was like puddles of water, and they were like, it's like children wrestling. And then even worse, the Bristol Bears supporters coach comes out of the car park and drives past them wrestling on the floor. And then, so I've got two things: is A, we shamed ourselves in front of the coach, and B, I'm looking at that coach wistfully and thinking, I wish it would stop, and I'll just jump on it now. I would have jumped on that coach and just left you there, to be honest. But anyway, as you will work out, listeners, we did manage to get home.
Well, I'll tell you what, if nothing else, that's what away trips are all about, isn't it?
100%.
Is you're out with your mates, you're having a laugh, and we did. We won the game. I know it was a narrow victory, but what a laugh it was.
Anyway,
the
point about that.
contrast to that was Bristol Bears women were Ealing yesterday on a beautiful sunny
Crisp day, wasn't
crisp sunny day in West London.
And to cut a long story short, they lost by 1 point, didn't they,
Yeah.
Miles? 39-38.
I mean, I'll give you a bit of background for fans who haven't been maybe following the women. I mean, up till yesterday, Ealing had only had 3 wins in the league, but they pushed Gloucester Hartpury to within 2 points last weekend. And, you know, they had a lot of firepower, a quick ball. and try scoring ability. So, roll on a week. They were playing on a fast pitch, their own ground, sunny day. Last week, as we just said on the podcast, Bristol showed their strength in the pack. Immense number of tries by Holly Phillips, 4, wasn't it? So the maul strength was great. And so all Ealing had to do was keep Bristol out of their 22, and then we'll sort of come on to the game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll dwell on it too much. I mean, it was a game where Bristol were never in the lead.
No, whole game.
It was one of those games that what we call momentum games. It was swinging backwards and forwards. I mean, essentially, it was.
I mean, first half we had a maul try. Predictable from
we were
Lark
10-0
Atkin
down
Davies
to start with.
We had a beautiful pop from Hannah Bottomman, was back from injury, to Alicia Joyce Butchers, and a lovely try, and then a Millie David lucky tap down on which
she was a bit lucky.
Potentially was dropped on 38
There'd been a TMO,
minutes.
it would have
So there's 3 tries.
She
Bristol.
dropped it in the dead ball area.
Yeah.
She actually got tackled.
Yeah.
And then she got held up, and she tried to put the ball down. It basically came out. Ref gave it. No TMO because it was so we got away with it. But I think the big issue with that was that every time Trailfinders were in R22 they scored, and they seemed to score quite easily. It was a relatively
Felt like it.
And then every time we were in there, there was a lot of good stuff from Bears and a lot of nice play, but our red zone efficiency was just nothing compared to theirs, and actually. They missed virtually every conversion as well, so and we actually kicked most of our conversions. Kira Bevan's actually a pretty good kicker off the tee,
for number 9.
So it was a very disjointed sort of performance, and there was one. I'll just tell you one more thing before you come in, is that the thing that really perhaps set the tone for the day, or was that in the first half we were down, we'd scored. We get the ball off the restart, so I can't remember what the score was just before. That was it.
It's only about 22-21.
And it's about 5 seconds to go before half time. And we play it out, and we're thinking, we're in our 22, doing the Bears way, and then it goes into the red, and you're thinking, we're in our, just get rid of it. Anyway, we kick it, but we don't kick it out, we just kick it straight down the middle. And you're thinking, well, what's the point of kicking it? Why are you not kicking it out? Like, what's the thinking there? And of course they, as you might imagine happily, they get possession of the ball, they get onto our line, a couple of phases, bang, straight over.
An amazing crossfield kick.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a crossfield kick.
To
and they
score on 43 minutes.
It was a crossfield kick from the scrum half.
Yeah.
That's how good it was.
So then go in
you're thinking
21-27, unnecessarily down another
and that
try.
kind of set. I mean, they played well, Bristol, and they didn't necessarily do a lot wrong, but they just leaked when it mattered.
You boys watch a lot more of the women's rugby than I do, right? There's a couple of questions that I want to ask you both.
Go for it.
First of all, are we putting too much onus on playing the Bears' way for the women's team like we do for the men's team? That's my first question.
A little bit.
Yeah. I could come back on that in that, yes.
That's your first question.
First, to answer that, we played exactly the same way. They ran out of their 22 at all opportunities and didn't kick it. And you've got to have immense ball handling skills and trust your process to do that. And I think twice the commentator said it didn't work out. We turned it over. And ultimately,
it's interesting.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And I think it's a bit of a catch-22 because we're known for a very, very, very strong pack.
Yeah.
And actually, most of the few games I've watched recently, we seem to have scored most of our tries from rolling balls and picking goes.
That was my second question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But to come back to your first question, I think we missed Holly Aitchison a little bit yesterday. Although Kira Bevan did a lot of the kicking, but I think Holly Aitchison, like every team, needs like an absolute top level 10. Would have controlled the game a little bit better, maybe. And this is no disrespect to anyone. I think it was Phoebe Murray again. Phoebe Murray's a great player. She's got an amazing pass, actually, an over-the-top pass. But I just think that's where we lacked a little bit of control.
Yeah.
A little bit of control at those key moments. I don't think it's us running it is a problem, but I just think it's making those decisions at the time when it's time to stop doing it. And I think maybe yesterday we just got unlucky in some ways. I was reflecting on it. I thought we didn't actually play that badly. No. And we cut some great lines. But I tell you what, Trailfinders, deserve a massive amount of respect for how they played. I thought they were brilliant. I thought they were an equal match to us. So therefore, it was a genuine. It wasn't a, it was a genuinely good result. That two good teams going at it, making a few mistakes, but
like Miles has said last week, pushed Gloucester all the way as well.
Away within 2, and this week, they beat Bristol by 1 point. So.
My second question was, maybe again I'm being too critical, but does it it feels to me we either have a forward dominated game, or we have the backs dominating the game. It doesn't feel like we've got joined up writing during the one game. I don't know.
I'm not sure I've seen them enough to be able to comment on that. And we've undoubtedly got a really strong set of forwards, but I don't know. I think to be honest, we're probably still a team in progress and in transition. And I think we need to be realistic about that. And there's some fantastic players, and the skill levels when they're not were really good. It's great. I really enjoyed watching it, actually.
I mean, let's not forget they've had some injuries in some key positions. Kira Bevan's come back in the last 3 weeks and has made a huge difference to the speed of ball. And bar one kick today where she hit the sticks, nearly got every successful kick. We've got Phoebe Murray playing at a slightly out of position number 10. So you could argue she's normally in the centres with Amber Reid. It was a phenomenal partnership. So it take the transition that Dave Ward has had to put in, and the rotation has been difficult. And when the crunch games, that could have been the slimmest thing which would have got us over the line and dominated. And potentially, we didn't really follow it last season. It is what got us to the final, where it just feels like weirdly other teams. And we can chat about this end of the season. If it's the Six Nations phenomena, have just stepped up, and teams that were just nowhere last season, and we've struggled to beat some of those teams.
I would say though, just last point on that, Dave Ward is in a really good position of having all the facilities.
Yeah, agreed.
He's got everything behind him. Yeah, and injuries aside. We've still got a very strong squad. Yeah. I just feel like when you said then, Pete, we're a side in transition. I don't necessarily think we would have put ourselves in that position a few weeks ago. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a longer term project that perhaps and I think we might have been a little bit. What's the word? The fact
overachieved last
season. I think perhaps. We did well to get to the final, and actually that might have come a bit like with us, the men in 2020-21. And we've struggled since to get back to that level, and all the other teams have improved and worked us out. And let's be clear. There's some good. It's a competitive league, even down to Trailfinders. Now we're talking Lightning Trailfinders. Now they're not going to make the playoffs, Lightning and Trailfinders. Reality is, but they are going to have they're going to dictate.
Yeah, they're going to trouble teams.
Yeah, and they're going to dictate who gets in the 4 out of the 5 and who plays at home and who doesn't. So I think that's going to drive us on. I think next season they'll realise this, and we may have to tweak things and tighten up. I don't know.
I think an identity. If we're playing like the men's, that could ultimately go against us. Personally, I feel that we have to play with the personnel that we've got on the field, and we have to. It's okay having an identity, but sometimes you have to play what's in front of you, don't you? And I think we have to mix it up a little bit more.
I mean,
but hopefully,
I think you're right. So ultimately. Bristol Bears women lost 39-38 yesterday. They had, frustratingly, an opportunity on the 83rd minute to take the game with a penalty line out, driving Moore, which Ealing kicked out to finish the game. Luckily, there was an infringement of the line out that the ref spotted, so they got a second bite of the cherry.
I think it was even worse than that. I think you said that they blocked the possible charge down of the kick out. So we got a penalty, went again, and then we got a rolling maul, and as the commentator said, and they managed to hold it up. It wasn't like they didn't collapse it. They managed to hold it up. And as the commentator said, I think it was one of the Ealing girls whose commentator said, you have to go to a dark place to stop a Bristol Bears rolling ball, and that's where they went.
We were a player up as well,
and it was a funny old finish.
It was absolutely gutting. They put their bodies on the line. They came back to quick tries and lost it with a held-up try on the 83rd minute. So fair play to Ealing. They had some brilliant players. But
based on results today,
luckily,
Exeter got beaten by Sale.
Some good results.
We've got to play Exeter. We've got Lightning next week, which is not going to be easy, but at Shaftesbury Park. So get down there.
2
I think
p.m. next
about
Saturday afternoon.
600 tickets left. And then we've got Chiefs, rearranged Chiefs game.
Following Saturday.
Win that. And we've basically got to win every game. They've got to get 15 points.
Yeah.
Dave Ward said we've basically got to get 15 points. If we get 15 points, I think there's still a chance of sneaking in.
Well, that's all we can do. I mean,
at the expense of probably Chiefs. But that's all they can do. It is out of our hands now.
Win.
It's win.
Drill, as Trump would say.
We've got Loughborough at home next weekend, Exeter Chiefs at home the following weekend, and then the tough one is the Quins away at the Stoop final game of the season.
Then they got beat by Sarries today, so they might have. By then, they might have secured second place. Who knows? Their foot might be off the pedal. They might be multiple feet off multiple gas pedals.
Yeah. So Pete and I are going up to Shaftesbury Park next Saturday. We have some leverage with our partners going out in the evening. We've wangled that hopefully, so we'll report on that game
at some point.
On some point.
On that point, I think we need to finish before we get to the hour.
Let's go for it.
So that's fun, boys. Sorry about the rain. It's been a little bit. It's been relentless. Not quite sure when we're going to do our next pod. It's definitely not going to be next Sunday, but we'll see how we get on with regards to how the Premiership Cup goes. If we start to look like we might qualify for that, we might have to call an emergency pod at some point.
I think we might put in strong squads.
Yeah, we're thinking. And also, we have got the denouement of the Women's League, so we do need to be around and in and around that.
Yeah, what's a denouement, man?
The end.
Well, I mean, we could segue that into potentially about our social media accounts.
Well, we could do that,
which you might be able to follow us on.
Yeah, keep. If you haven't followed us on Instagram, go and have a look, because I'm working quite hard to try and put some fun stuff. And I thought I did a really good reel today, and maybe only 300 people looked at it. So go and have a look at our Instagram. It's Bears Beyond the Gate. And if you don't want to have a look at it, get your daughters or your young relatives to look at it, because I realise it's not a middle-aged man thing. Anyway, boys, on that note, we're going to call it a day. I think it's time to go. So everybody, have a good week, stay safe, and
up the Bears.
Up the Bears.